Welcome back to the channel. We're once again working on our 2013 Buick Enclave. Now the bodywork and painting gnomes were here, so we can start putting all of our wiring back in here so we can actually drive this thing instead of pushing it around because it's kind of heavy. We need to drive it over there so we can put it up on the lift so we can change our rear subframe that's all mangled. Let's get going. So we'll start by routing our wiring harness up our quarter. Since we took our time and saved the clips, they just snap right in. Not sure why it's wrapped in orange electrical tape. Guess they were building hybrids before this. Just kept using the same tape. My best guess is that it's because there are airbag wires inside. I'm sure an expert in the comments will tell me what it's for. Even if they don't know, they'll just make something up. So we'll toss that broken plastic piece out that holds all our modules. We'll route our harness outside. And we'll come outside here and snap it all in. It's for the taillight and the rear bumper. We'll bolt our ground in here. Once we do that, it should run again. Clip in our sunroof drain. Actually, that's the Vista roof drain, I believe. We'll route that out the quarter. Put our little baffle in here. Water barrier, whatever it is. We'll stick our plastic piece up there and snap in our wiring harness where it goes. Then we can pull it back down and snap our modules that go in the backside in. Then we can drop it in and bolt it in for the last time. Snap our modules in the outside. This all came with the used quarter. That's why it's good to buy a used one. Get all this extra stuff. And we can snap our vents in. And we'll put in our liftgate module, motor, arm, and everything. It's one big assembly. Just drops down on the tabs. That holds it in place and you can put the bolts in it. Plug in our module, and we'll bolt it down. Snap it into the tailgate in case we want to use it. So we have our super expensive subframe. Take a guess at how much it cost. If you guess $60, you're right, and this isn't a game show. But we're going to throw it in there, get rid of that nasty camber issue we got going on there. And if you're wondering how they sell it for $60, I'm wondering that myself, because they had to pay somebody to take it out, they had to pay somebody to bring it to me, and they had to pay for our awesome fuel prices. So I think $60 is probably about what they have in it. And the reason they are so cheap and they're willing to give them away is because there are a ton of these. They fit over a decade of vehicles, 08 to 17 Enclaves. And they don't just fit Enclaves, they also fit Saturn Outlook, Chevy Traverse, and GMC Acadia. And there are plenty of all of those in the junkyard. So they're willing to give them away. And I'm happy to take them because our old subframe's made out of GM's favorite metal, Playdonium. It's not worth straightening. So we're going to throw in some fresh Playdonium and let it get hit again. We'll pull our donut off of here. Then we can unbolt our caliper. We're going to take the bracket and everything off. This way we don't have to bleed the brake system. If we were just to leave that stuff on there and take the brake hoses off, then we'd have to re-bleed the system. Saves us a little time. And we're going to end up doing a brake job on it anyway, so not a big deal. Push the caliper back in there. Then we'll grab what's left of our bungee cord, just the end. We'll hang this caliper up on the quarter panel. Out of our way. That way there's no stress on the brake hose. We'll take off our other wheel. We'll do the same thing on this side. I forgot my brake job hammer, so brake job is going to be a little more work than usual. We'll hang our caliper. Now we can unbolt our drive shaft from the torque tube. Pry it off of there. And we'll just let it hang. Now we're going to take our e-brake cables off. Clip our pair of vice grips on there and spin the adjustment nut off of there. Pull that cable out. That gives us enough slack that we can squeeze the rest of the cable together and unlatch it from the front cable. Then we can squeeze the clips, pop it out of the little bracket. Now you can pull our cables out of the holders that are welded on. This one clips in. So we'll squeeze the tabs on there and pull that out. We'll disconnect our wiring harness. It's for the ABS wires, the four-wheel drive module, and the fuel pump wires. They run over the top of the subframe and then up to the fuel pump. Now we can unbolt the torque tube. We're going to let it hang on a ratchet strap. I don't put too much tension on the bushings. It's about to get a whole lot lighter in the back end. We're missing a bunch of stuff inside, so hopefully it doesn't nosedive off the lid. So now we can unbolt our subframe. We'll unbolt our shocks. We're going to take the brackets and everything off. Those little tabs on the brackets. So we're going to turn them around. That way they won't get snagged on there when we lift the truck up. And we can lift it off. Put some tires in the back as a counterweight, because I didn't really want to see it nosedive. I'm sure you guys did, but I didn't want to have to fix the front end too. Everybody already told me I was wasting enough time fixing the back. So in addition to a broken knuckle, that's not right. It should look like that. Now we're going to pull our drive axle nut off. We're going to pull the drive axles out. That way we can pull the torque tube off. I could put the subframe on there and put it all together later, but I'm by myself and it's much easier to work with it all when it's on the ground and out of the truck. So that's how I'm going to do it. We'll unbolt our ABS sensor. Our used suspension didn't have one, so we need to save this one. And it's got a little bit of that Michigan corrosion in there, so we're going to have to take our time to see if we can save it. Because I'm poor and can't afford a new sensor. So we're going to use all the tricks. Wiggle it a little bit, a little penetrating oil, a screwdriver to hold some tension on there and pry it out. We're going to use our trim clip pliers to wiggle and pull. Hopefully, with all that and a little bit of luck, we saved it. We'll find out when the ABS light comes on. So we'll take the nut off the end of this bent bolt. Then we can disconnect our upper suspension. Now we can pull our sway bar mount out. Give us a little room to move the sway bar link that I wasn't even going to attempt to remove, because it's going to break for sure. So our suspension's apart on the top, so we can lay it down a little bit, knock our drive axle out. I left the nut on there so we can hit it. It's a little rusty, doesn't come right out like it's supposed to, but it did come out. Now we can disconnect our harness from our torque tube, and we'll go over on the passenger side. We'll do the same thing. Pull that bolt out of the top of our suspension. We'll set the nut up in the nut holder, which is also the top of the spring. Disconnect our ABS wire. That one came right out. There's one more arm on this side. Since it didn't get hit with a car, it has more parts attached to it. So we'll take that nut off of there. So we can pull the knuckle down, give us some room to get the drive axle out. Unbolt the drive axle. Since our penetrating oil was handy, we'll spray some of that in there and hopefully it'll come out a little easier. Slide it apart. And now we can pop our drive axles out. A little pry bar in there. Pop them out. Pry between the drive axle and the housing. Push it all the way in, give it a quick snap. Usually pulls it past those lock rings. Now we can unbolt the differential and the torque tube from the subframe. There are 2 bolts that go through the bushings and into the back of the diff. And drop it on the ground for a stress test. It passed. Need 3 hands here. But now it's out. We'll slide it over to the new subframe. Now we have to unbolt the four-wheel drive module. Bolts into the bottom of the subframe. Then we'll pull the harness off. This harness is different than our other one, so we're just going to use the original. That module is not on our old subframe. Neither are the holes for it. So I made a template, measured off of the old subframe. We're going to put that up on our new subframe, and we're going to drill our holes so we can put our J-nuts on there and then mount our module. So I'll start with a 1/8 inch drill bit, drill some pilot holes, then I'll drill some 5/16 holes. Then I got the unibit, so we'll drill some any size holes. Whatever fits the J-nut, that's what size they're going to be. The old ones were square, these ones are going to be round, because as long as the J-nut fits, I don't care. So we painted up the holes we drilled so that they won't rust. While we're waiting for that to dry, we'll pull our emergency brake cable off. Our paint's dry. We'll slide our J-nuts in there. Use our J-nut installation tool. Those are available in my Amazon store if you were looking for them. They're incorrectly labeled as trim clip pliers. Bolt our module in. There is 1 bolt on the bottom for the module, which we did the same way as these 2. The camera guy didn't think you needed to see that. Snap our harness in. Time to get our workout in for the day. This is the Backbuster 3000, made up of the torque tube and differential assembly. We'll sneak it under the subframe. It's not really heavy, it's just kind of awkward. Set it up on a jack stand. We'll go on the back side, start the bolts. Get one started by 1/2 thread. Hope that we can get the other one started before that thread pulls out and the thing falls on the ground, or at least back on the cart. Success. Now we can tighten it up. Plug the harness back in. And now we can put our drive axles in. You always try to get the C-clip with the open part at the bottom. That way the solid part is sitting down in the groove. If you turn it over and have it the other way, the open part's at the top. The solid part, it ends up being at the bottom and it's harder to snap in. So if the clip is facing with the opening down, it usually snaps in a little easier. I had to put in about 4,000 drive axles to learn that. I'm a slow learner. So we'll get it in the splines. And we'll just kind of wiggle it in there. And we'll put little never sees and the splines on the outside. Make it easy on the next guy. I hope I'm not the next guy, but could be. in case it needs a wheel bearing or something. Slide our drive axle in. We'll start reconnecting all the arms. This is an overly complicated rear suspension for some reason. Tighten everything up. Tighten up our drive axle nut. And we can install the ABS wire. Put that in last so I don't end up breaking it. But because I put it in last, we can't get to it with a socket. We'll have to do it with a wrench. Better than breaking it, I guess. Now we can throw our drive axle in there. Put a little penetrating oil on it so we don't tear up that seal when we put it in. Got our C-clip facing down. Tap it in there. And now we can put our never sees on here. Glitter paste. Slide that into the hub on the outside. Make sure you get that never sees everywhere. No job's complete until it's been tracked all over the car. Start hooking up all of our suspension arms. It was nice getting to use suspension because even the bolts I needed would have been pretty costly to buy all that stuff new. Tighten everything up with our electric torque wrench. And our suspension's ready to go in. I don't know if it's ready. It's going in. Just lower the car down on where we think it should be. Okay, so we weren't that close the first time. Lower it down a little more. And we can start bolting it in. Now we can unbolt our shock mounts. The used shocks were just as bad as our original shock, so we're going to throw a new set on. Wow. Brand new. Fancy. We'll put the bolt in the bottom. We'll put our brackets on the top. We'll raise them up a little bit so we can bolt them in. And we'll tighten up our bolt through the top and the bolt in the bottom. And we can take it off the stand. We're going to do the same thing on the passenger side. We're just going to do it a little differently. This one we'll do on the floor. We'll put that bolt in the center with all the brackets. Then we'll put it in. The other way worked. I thought this way might be easier. It was. Wow. So from now on, we'll be doing it this way. We'll just start the nut and bolt. We won't tighten it down just yet. We'll set our assembly in here. Put the bolt in the bottom. And start our bolts that go into our rail. Bolt the bracket in. You can bolt the bottom in. And take it off of the stand. Now we can tighten up the top. Now we can bolt our torque tube up.
I was hanging on our ratchet strap when we had it up in the air. Route the wiring harness along our frame rail and plug it in. Would have had to take the spare out if we hadn't taken it out already. I'll plug in the harness that goes to the fuel pump. And we'll route our e-brake cables back through the bracket that's welded onto the frame. First one clipped in, that one just sits in there. Put our other bracket on there. Before we put the other cable in, we'll take and connect it to the front while we have some slack. I can tighten the adjuster down in there. Just put it back where the old rust marks were. Haha, a good use for rust, I guess. Now we can bolt the drive shaft to the torque tube. Admit it, how bad was it bothering you that I didn't tighten up the drive axle nut? Or did you even notice? Did you forget about it? Because I did. That's why I always go over everything when I'm putting it back together, when I'm all done, check all the bolts, because I find ones I left loose. So now we can toss on our shiny new rotors. Put the little Torx bolt in there that holds it on so it doesn't end up on my toes. And we'll unbolt the other rotor. Or try. This is the part where everybody tells me their Milwaukee could have done it. Yes, I am sure your Milwaukee could have snapped the head off the bolt, which is not what I'm trying to accomplish here. I guess your Milwaukee tool was useless, I'm sorry. So first we try hitting it with a hammer. That didn't work. So we get out our favorite tool, because that fixes everything. Just hit the outside edge of it and rotate it around. Once it breaks free, you can go back at it with the impact. It'll spin right out of there. Knock the rotor off. Throw those in the pile. Now we'll unbolt our caliper from our caliper bracket. We'll take it over and clean all the rust off of it, put our new slides on there, grease them all up, and reinstall it. We'll bolt the caliper bracket in and slide our new pads in there. Slide the caliper on and put the caliper bolts in. Click. Click. Do the same thing on the other side. Unbolt the caliper from the caliper bracket. Take it out of our hanger. And our caliper bracket's all cleaned up and ready to go back in. This would have been so much easier with the brake job hammer. Put our pads on, our caliper on. Torque down our caliper bolts. Done. Now we can throw our tires back up. I did get a new tire for the other side, so there's 2 brand new tires on the back, matching pair. So now we can pull the caps we had on the filler neck off. I closed up the system so that I wouldn't have an explosion while I was welding. Oh, we'll slide the filler neck in there. Clamp on. Put a little grease on there to make this job a little easier. Bolt it in to the frame rail. Now we can tighten up our clamp and snap in our vent. Now we can throw the tire back on this side. That was our new used wheel and our new tire. Put our old tire sensor in there so we don't have to program anything. And now we can throw our exhaust up. Since I'm by myself, you gotta do it the easy way. Just set it on the ground and I just lift it up a little bit. We'll put one hanger on one side, we'll put one hanger on the other side, and we'll go back and snap on the other two hangers that are in the back here. And there's one hanger in the middle, so we'll lift the exhaust up and get that one in. Then we can raise it up and hook up the front of it. Put a little muffler cement on there, make sure we get a nice seal, and that the next guy has a really hard time taking it apart. Put a little lever seize on the studs so that the bolts come out easier for the next guy. We don't want to make his whole day bad, just part of it. Tighten them up. We'll smear the muffler cement over it so that it isn't oozing out. We don't want the clean freaks getting all bent out of shape. Now we can throw up our fuel tank guardrail. That is the best term I could come up with for it, because that's exactly what it is. The back two holes are slotted, so you can just set it up there, and then you can run the bolts in the front, and then tighten them all up. I'll put our little cover on our spare tire, tuck it in, and we'll throw that back in here. That cover on the spare tire is actually, because the exhaust goes around it, that's I guess supposed to insulate it so that the heat from the exhaust isn't prematurely compromising the integrity of the tire. That's a lot of big words. I need to go sit down. My head hurts now. We'll crank it up with our electric impact. So much easier than doing this on the side of the road. And that'll probably be the last time it's ever taken out. And we'll throw our fuel door back on. It's riveted on. We'll just snap it in there with our assault riveter. And now we got to start stripping it down so that the painting gnomes can do their job. Actually, the sanding gnome has to come first. So we're going to make a template for all of our letters back here. And we'll pull our template off, stick it to one of the inside windows, so that when we want to put it all back on, we'll know exactly where everything goes. So our bottom piece runs right along the bottom of the tailgate. Mark all our letters so we get our spacing right. Write the letters on our template, because otherwise who knows what it's going to say when I'm done. We use a razor blade to trim the end flush with the side of the tailgate. That way we have two sides that we'll line our template up with, and that should put our words exactly where they belong. In theory, anyway. We'll see. So now we can pull our letters off there and drop a few on the floor. I haven't broken any yet. And we'll use our magic eraser and take all the rest of the glue off of there. There's a Buick name on the other side, so we'll do the same thing. Throw our tape up there. Get all the way to the bottom. And then we'll throw tape on the side. A little more than we needed. We'll trim it down. Cut our end off. So we have two sides to measure it off of. Mark our letters. And pop them off of there. Now when you pull the template off, you don't want to tear it off too fast. You don't want to stretch it out and distort it. It is only paper, so if you're not tearing it straight or pull on it too hard, you end up with a template that's distorted and letters in the wrong place. So we'll take our time and pull it off, and we'll go stick it on one of the sunroofs probably. Now we can pull off our tri-shield emblem. This one's a little tricky because it's in a recessed area. So you gotta take your time getting the scraper in there. Once it's in there, you just work your way around. Don't need a template for this one. I don't think I can screw it up. It goes right in the middle of the circle. Now that I've said that, you're gonna have to watch the next video to see if I actually get it right. So we'll pull our doors apart. These are the easiest doors in history to prep for paint. We'll pull the two bolts out of our belt molding, pull the cap off, loosen up the screw for the door handle, pull the cap off the back, pull the door handle out, and the little gasket. We'll pull our belt molding off. And we can pull the lower door molding off. It's two-sided taped all the way around, so we got to break that. And then there's clips across the top. There are those clips that you can push each side and they'll snap off. So I keep doing each clip, go a little further with the two-sided tape, get to the next clip, pop each side off. Just keep working my way across the top. This is not the method I usually use. Thought I'd try it and see if it worked better. It didn't. It'll be the last time we do it that way. So we'll cut our two-sided tape off the bottom. Just pry down on it at the same time. The tape cuts pretty easy. Now we pull the molding off. We need to get this out because we're going to paint all the way up to the front. That way we don't have any blends in there. We're not painting all the way to the front. We're going to blend the paint at the top, and then we're just going to clear all the way to the front. So we'll just snap all the clips off. And the molding is two pieces, so we'll slide the end of it off. Now we'll go over to the driver's side. We're going to do the same thing. Pop the top of the molding off. Unscrew the bottom little triangle here. And there's a couple of clips on the back. We'll just undo one, and then you can kind of twist and pull the molding back. Leaves the clips on there. We can get those easier when the molding is out of the way. So we'll pop those off and put them back in the molding so we don't lose them, and be ready to install when we're done. Now we got to pull our lift gate apart. A couple little push pins in the back. Just pull the centers out and pop the clips out. Pull the cover off the grab handle. And we'll pull our lift gate arm off of there so we can get this top trim piece off. Wiggle and pull. And we can get to the bolts behind our grab handle. And more wiggle and pull. And the whole thing comes down. Disconnect the wires for the button and for the lights. And now we can disconnect our light, unbolt it, unbolt the one on the other side and disconnect it, and pop it out of there. Now we can unbolt the trim panel for above the license plate. It houses the license plate lights and the camera. There is one clip in the center, so we just squeeze the tabs and pop it out of there. We can put our striker back in after they painted the door opening. That way we'll be able to put the door back on. But first, we got 5 gallons of foam to replace. And that was not an exaggeration. because that wasn't even all of it. So if you watch the foam that's down on the cardboard, you can see what's happening. It expands. You just put it in there and it slowly expands. You just kind of let it drip down where I needed it to go. It expanded, drip more down on it. It expands from there and it just keeps expanding until it fills up the whole spot. Sometimes I put a hose on the end of that so I can direct it, but there's plenty of room in there. It's easy to get to. And sadly, that foam cost more than the whole rear suspension. So now we can put our door back on. We only had it out of the way so the painting gnome could paint our door jamb. Make his life a little easier, and the door's not really hard to take off. There's a pin on the top, so we just set it down on that pin. And there's 2 bolts in the bottom hinge. So it's sitting on the pin. 1 plug just snaps in and has a lock. Bolt our hinge on the bottom end. And tighten up our pins on the top. The door check is part of the lower hinge, so we don't have a door check to worry about. We can unbolt our bumper bracket, get that out of the way so they can sand it, and we'll take our other door apart. Unscrew the belt molding, unscrew the door handle, pop the cap off, pull the handle off, and the gasket, pull the belt molding off. Like I said, these doors are really easy to prep for paint. Don't even have to take the door panel off, which means this one's not getting cavity waxed. Now we can pull our lower molding off. This side we're going to do the way I usually do it. We're just going to take all the 2-sided tape off all the way around. And we'll pop all our clips off and our molding comes off. So our Enclave is all ready for paint, and as soon as the painting gnomes get in here and get their job done, we can throw it all back together and hopefully start driving it. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.